first showdown was primarily Triple G being the aggressor, working behind the jab, as Canelo was the counterpuncher, working off his back foot, looking to capitalize on Golovkin's mistakes. To be an effective counterpuncher, one must be good at pattern recognition. If you're able to pick up on your opponent's habits, then you're able to exploit their offense, as every time they throw a punch, they'll leave an opening. In this exchange, Golovkin would throw a jab but not follow it with another punch. He would do this 3 times. The first 2 jabs were not followed up, so Canelo understands that Triple G is looking for Canelo to fight on the jab. So by the 3rd jab, Canelo will counter quickly, not with a power punch, but a fast jab instead. A fight of this caliber is truly hard to see how sophisticated these exchanges were. It's not until you've slowed it down for the naked eye, for the brain to fully comprehend. Triple G will back Canelo into the corner with his jab. The second Canelo leans back, Golovkin will throw another jab to keep Canelo at a position to set up the cross. All the while, Canelo knows this and counters with the right uppercut. Even after landing the uppercut, Canelo knows he's exposed to the left hook, so he covers up right away. But Golovkin is still able to land the left hook with precision right above the guard on top of the head. The story of the first fight was how effective Golovkin's jab were. He landed 108 jabs at 29.9%. When facing a counterpuncher, you must have a good jab. That's one of the main ways to throw off your opponent's timing in order to set up other punches. Typically, after one starts to open up with power punches, it's usually followed up by more power punches. So when Canelo gets low to defend the left hook to the body, he pulls back up to regain his vision and to avoid uppercuts. What's interesting here is once he picks back up, at this range, he's ready to defend against the potential cross by rolling and has his right glove up to defend against the hook. But what he isn't expecting is for Triple G to finish his combination with the jab. Before Golovkin could fully recover from his miss, Canelo backs him up with the jab, then a cross for Triple G to cover his middle, leaving him exposed to a left hook. The first fight could be best summed up as Golovkin being an effective aggressor, while Canelo was able to land a few more power punches at a higher percentage, according to Copybox. Although the first fight ended in a draw, I personally had Triple G winning the first fight. I scored the fight by the criteria that Triple G set the pace, threw and landed more total punches. He effectively worked behind the jab, landing 53 more jabs than Canelo at that. Many don't understand that the more you throw, the more you're vulnerable to openings. If Canelo would have been more effective counterpuncher, Triple G's 103 total punches wouldn't have been as high. Nonetheless, 49 total punches landed. Usually the effective counterpuncher outlands more power punches than their opponents. In my humble opinion, I interpreted that as Golovkin was able to impose his gameplay better than Canelo was able to execute his. In a rematch, Canelo vowed to fight the true Mexican style, toe-to-toe, and that's exactly what we got. The fight was different from the first, as Canelo fought as the counterpuncher in the first fight, but this time, both juggernauts stood in the pocket. The fight was fought at what I call no man's land. There's guys who fight from the outside, where there's usually enough distance to react as there's a gap that must be closed. Then there's phone booth fights, where it's shoulder to shoulder, but both guys are pretty much rock'em sock'em robots. But in no man's lane, both fighters sit tight in the pocket, an arm's distance away, only stepping and moving back just enough to evade punches, but always close enough to return fire. To break down what goes down in a fight when both fighters sit in the pocket, the first thing to take notice of is how little space both fighters have between one another. There's no big gap to be closed, no fighter is dancing around with excessive lateral movement, and it's at a range in which every punch is able to land. The kind of fight that usually unfolds at this proximity is a high-paced action fight. Neither man is trying to back away, and the only time they'll move is to either engage or pull back just enough to still be in firing range for counters. In a rematch, both fighters threw for a combined 1,501 punches. To put that into perspective, Spence versus Porter was considered a war of attrition, and together they threw for a combined 1,489 punches. Taking into consideration that they fought at welterweight, 13 pounds south of the middleweight division. To fight at this elite level, neither man is just chugging punches hoping that one will land. They're essentially playing blitz chess, except it's with the fist. What's important are lead punches. If you open every combination with a jab, your opponent will quickly catch on and counter over it, as the pattern recognition is easy to read. The offense must be creative, open each engagement with different punches, using those that landed as threats to feint in order to create other openings for other punches. In these exchanges, Canelo will open every engagement with the jab. Each time he throws a jab, Triple G will react with head movement. Once Canelo has Triple G thinking that every opening will begin with the jab, he throws in a feint, moving Triple G's head right into his lead left hook.
Canelo loads up with a left, started from his hip, it ended on the right.
In order to break pattern recognition defensively, you have to mix up the ways in which you react to your opponent's engagements. If you only move your head, the jab or feint will move your head right into the punches. If you only catch a parry, the setup punch will leave you open to looping punches around the guard. This is what I mean by blitz chess. It's a reactionary fight, both men trying to catch their opponents between punches. Canelo parries the jab, counters with a quick jab of his own. All the while Triple G sees this and tries to land a right over the counter jab. Then Canelo goes under the right with the body counter and finishes the exchange by landing a left hook as Golovkin picks his head back to the center line and is still able to roll with the return fire from Golovkin's left hook. There were also quick defensive adjustments. Here, Triple G lands a solid jab and tries to follow up with the hook, but Canelo gets under the hook to return a counter uppercut. Triple G is completely out of position and exposed at this point, but is still able to quickly turn to roll away from the counter uppercut and establish a new angle. Two things that amazes me: the power both guys are able to generate at such short range and their precision punching. Golovkin lands the uppercut and even defends against the counter right, but Canelo is still able to find a small opening to land his right cross. What really drives me crazy is how one can call themselves diehard boxing fans but still discredit either one of these champions, saying they're overrated. This fight alone to me was one of the greatest fights I've witnessed personally at the middleweight division. The contest displays such high levels of technicality, durability, and heart. You can see how neither fighter wanted to back away, moving just enough to preserve energy but still evade punches, all while constantly looking for the smallest openings to land their shots. I'll be the first to admit that I wouldn't consider myself the best judge in boxing. Although I had Triple G winning the first fight, the rematch to me was a lot harder to score. It was such a back and forth war. When I watched it live, I had Triple G winning the rematch. Years later, when I watched it with fresh eyes again, I saw Canelo winning. At the end of the day, it was a great fight, and I could see it going either way. I mean, hey, what can you say? Big drama show.